Morning, Internet fans. Ryan Perry here, Simple Biz Support. Today is Thursday, August 4th. I think Christmas is right around the corner. At least it feels that way with how fast this year has gone by. It is Internet Marketing Thursday, and I have Virginie Dorn, the CEO of Business Website Center, on the other side. Good morning, Virginie.
Good morning, Ryan. How are you on this beautiful Thursday morning?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Normally, I've been wearing shorts and the polo shirts the last week or so, but the last couple days it has really cooled down in Sonoma County. The coastal fog has kicked in, and so I'm back in pants and polos. I almost wore a sweatshirt this morning. It was a little chilly getting to the office.
Yes, for those who don't know, the Bay Area in California, which is near San Francisco and the Silicon Valley, is we get that fog in the morning from the ocean. So it gets really cool in the morning, but then it can be in the hundreds of degrees in the afternoon. There's a huge temperature difference from 1 hour to the other. So, but anyway, as always, we cannot complain. We live in one of the most beautiful places in the world.
Yep, and the grapes love the fog. That's what makes Sonoma and Napa Valley so special for the wine country or wine folk.
I think we should do our webinars of different wine tasting every single first.
Okay.
And we could promote our beautiful local wineries here. We could just volunteer the wine.
we would definitely have to turn it into an afternoon session, not a morning session. Maybe 4 o'clock.
That sounds good.
uh, we'll have to plate that for a future episode. Today we're going to talk about boilerplate content. And when I think about boilerplate content, I think of regular generic, it's just the same stuff. If you go and get a lease for a property, you get a boilerplate rental agreement, or you get a boilerplate loan. It's kind of that generic copy. However, on your website and the way Google looks at boilerplate content is the same but similar as far as what that content is. So what exactly is boilerplate content? And then we can talk about the SEO ramifications or non-ramifications.
So boilerplate content is actual textual content, then has no big importance into the meaning of the page. So the same thing in a contract, you might have a 100-page legal contract and 90 pages are just stuff. It's non-essential. It's there because it needs to be there, but it brings no value to the contract. Same thing for web pages. There are times when you need to have content or text or paragraphs, then really don't bring much to the purpose of that page. So for some law offices, it could be the legal disclaimer at the very bottom of the footer, but it doesn't have to be. Sometimes it's non-essential text that needs to be there on every page. It seems repetitive. It is truly not duplicated content, but nonetheless, it might need to be there for one reason or the other. So again, those boilerplate content is not very important to users, not very important to search engines like Google. So the questions has always been, and some have, and recently it's come back as a discussion among webmasters, is how does Google and other major search engines look at that text that is non-essential, but nonetheless present on the law pages? Does it penalize the pages? Does it look at it? Does it index it? Does it ignore it? And this is what we're going to talk about it today. So it's not that interested in the show today, but nonetheless, if you're interested in understanding what that is and how Google handles it, please listen up.
So, yeah, and one of the things that jumps out at me is if you actually look at the Google support page that talks about boilerplate content, is that it also says that your header and your footer is considered boilerplate, and that Google is able to recognize what that boilerplate content is, and therefore it will ignore it. Now, back in the day, we used to do keyword stuffing in the footer. We made sure we put extra links so that we had link juice in the footer. And, a lot of that has gone away, but I still know a lot of companies will put, let's say they're a local service. I'm a service company, an attorney, a dentist, electrician, a plumber, and I'm located in Rohnert Park, but I also want to be found in Santa Rosa. So a lot of times down in the footer, we would always put, also Sebastopol could talk in the footer. And if this page correctly, correctly, and this is about boilerplate, is our conversation that we had before we went on air this morning. If I'm understanding it correctly, those tags may not really have any. If Google is saying your footer is boilerplate content, and we're basically going to ignore that content because all the critical information that your viewer should be concerned about is actually in the body of the text, and that's where we're really putting the emphasis from a search relevancy point of view.
True. So a few years ago, if you looked at a footer and you were really into SEO for your website, a webmaster might have recommended to have a different footer on each page. So you might have 50 pages, and we wanted that footer to be slightly different, so it didn't get penalized as duplicate content, or Google didn't see it as keyword stuffing. So we were doing a lot of hard work. Eventually, Google got smarter and said, okay, whatever, you can have a same footer. We won't penalize you. So that's the key thing today to understand. Then the Google search engine has come such a long way now that even though it might tag a piece of your content as boilerplate, it's not going to penalize you in terms of ranking. It's just going to skip over it and ignore it totally. Or understand then, okay, if it's good enough of a homepage, I don't have to take it in consideration for the other 100 pages because it's repeated and it just needs to be there again as boilerplate. So again, it is not creating a penalty in terms of your ranking. It's just going to be simply passed over by Google, which is good news. That means you don't have to worry about having different headers and different footers on every single page of your website like we used to a few years back.
Right. And then Google is also saying that sometimes it's not able to, maybe depending on the way you've laid out the website and those type of things, to determine if this content is boilerplate. And so there is code that you can actually embed in the page to go, look, this is just boilerplate content. And I think you brought it up earlier, is going to be like attorneys. Typically, they need some sort of disclaimer, and they should put that disclaimer on every single page, including blogs. We might have issues about duplicate content. And as long as Google is able to recognize that, oh, this is just boilerplate content, it's really not relevant to the topic, the main body of conversation, let's just ignore it so that it doesn't affect ranking. And when we say ranking, we're both talking positively and negatively, you know, because if you try and load some keywords in there and Google is basically ignoring it, then it's not going to help you in a positive or negative fashion.
Yes. And you mentioned the code. So there's actually coding technique you can use to identify specific text as being boilerplate. That's done through CSS and classes. So your webmaster should know about it. And truthfully, at Business Website Center, we've never seen great value of it. It's not used often. And again, because the search engine algorithm has got so great at identifying on its own what boilerplate is in comparison to the good content on your web pages, then this code is almost obsolete. I mean, 2 years ago, perhaps. Nowadays, with the way the advancements have been with the search engines, you don't even need to identify it. If you see you're having issue with that, of course you can use the code, but again, it's become a little bit obsolete. And it's not, again, then you're going to be penalized. It's just going to be skipped over. So just have a discussion with your webmaster. They should know about the subject matter and should be able to explain to you if it's something for you to worry about or not to worry about it at all for your type of website.
Yeah, definitely. And just to clarify, what we've been talking about comes straight from a Google support page. It's so as far as how Bing handles it, Yahoo, or any of the other search engines, I personally don't know. You may have more input on this, but the conversation that we're having today is specifically about Google, which, you know, hopefully is your primary source, simply because typically about 7 out of 10 searches are still done through Google these days.
Correct. And here at our company, we solely focus on Google and the way Google looks at web pages. I mean, Yahoo and Bing, it's all fine and dandy, but they represent such a small percentage. Then if we code for Google and do it properly the way they want us to do it, our clients are going to get the best result. So when you say it comes directly from Google, that's absolutely true. Google has ongoing live blogs and where people like myself and my team can participate in and ask questions. And this is when we hear those type of things. And again, boilerplate, is identified automatically by their search engine, but does not penalize the ranking of a page. It just simply skip it over if it does tag it as boilerplate. So comes directly from a Google employee. That's why we feel confident about making such a fact or telling you during the webinars, because we heard it directly from them. Therefore, it must be true.
There you go. So I guess the key takeaway is that Google really getting smart. I mean, every year they're getting smarter and smarter, and every time the black hat, gray hat SEO people try and manipulate the system, they have a way of figuring this stuff out and fixing it. And one of the big things, a couple years ago was the whole duplicate content issue. The Panda algorithm change really affected a lot of businesses, so everybody became scared about having duplicate content. And this is just a way of going, look, Google's smart enough to know that you're going to have some duplicate content on your website. Again, especially if you're an attorney or if you have some sort of legalese or any type of content that has to be on every page. Google's pretty smart. If you're concerned that they may not be able to recognize it as boilerplate content, then simply put the code in, and then they will exclude it. Just realize that Google has to index your page again in order to recognize that code's there, so it's not going to happen overnight. Any last thoughts on this?
Yes, one thing I forgot to mention, but in terms of ratio, if you have a long page or any page, as a matter of fact, you want to make sure that the good content, the one that is optimized and the one you want to be indexed, is far greater than the boilerplate content. So if your legalese is twice the size of the good content, you're going to have a problem with that page and its indexation. So it's all about ratio and proportion. But beside that, in most cases, something not to worry about. Again, Google is smart enough to recognize your boilerplate and, again, still index your pages accordingly.
All right, perfect. With that, I think that is the end of today's show. Virginie, as always, I appreciate the time and energy that you put into it. And next week, is it AMP?
Yes, accelerated mobile pages, something brand new from Google again. It's a hot topic on the internet for webmaster, a new way of coding pages specifically for mobile devices. So tune up with us next week.
Yeah, and so this is definitely going to be a definite want to see because it is new technology. As we know with Google, they're always testing new things. And the big question is, will this be something that they implement and move forward and integrate into analytics? Or is it going to be, we tested it, but we don't see there's a change? No way of finding out until we try it and do it.
I think it's going to stay. So follow us next week.
All right. Sounds good. All right, everybody. That's it for today's show. Thank you for watching. If you have any comments, we'd love to hear them below. Until then, we'll see you next week. Take care.